Hi, hello, and welcome to the third episode of The Last of Us Factions Poopcast with yours truly, Dr. Pooplove. This is a podcast for factions heads made by a day one factions head. And in today's episode, we're going to dive into patch 1.03, talk hacks, glitches, and cheats in the game, and as always, check in on the factions to watch. But before we start, I want to let you know you can catch me streaming live at 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Thursday, on twitch.tv/Dr. Pooplove. And if you want to hear some of my hot takes, find me on Twitter at Dr. Pooplove. And if you like what you hear in today's podcast, please consider smashing that subscriber button. But let's get right into patch history lessons. And we bring it back with patch 1.03 for factions on PS3. Now, in this patch, there was a couple multiplayer fixes. The revive range was increased slightly by about 1 meter. This was making it so that you wouldn't lose you reviving someone, they crawl just a little bit slightly away, and then suddenly you're not reviving them anymore. They made that a little more forgiving. Players can prevent opponents from finishing executions and interrogations. And I should probably mention that this patch actually introduced interrogations, but I'll talk a little bit more about that. But players can prevent opponents from finishing executions so that the opponent does not receive parts. The down player will still die, of course, but it's more helpful in preventing the other team from gaining parts. There was a matchmaking update. Players should basically start finding opponents around their level of experience more often, and teams should be balanced more evenly. I don't know if Naughty Dog ever really got this totally right, but I guess they made some tweaks there. They moved some of the supply box locations for university, high school, lakeside, and downtown. Honestly, I can't even remember where they used to be. I think high schools upstairs middle box used to be a little bit closer to the kind of like the classroom door and the little stairs, and then university's box I think it wasn't in that, the down the hill box was a little bit more open. I think you were able to kind of snipe people from there, or to there. So I do remember that, but I don't really remember some of these other ones. Some starting at cannoners were adjusted. Cool. There was also some supply box disbursement of parts was tweaked a little bit, given a little bit out more fairly, I believe. Not really sure the ins and outs of that part. But then also winning matches by a dominating count, like a survivors match where you win all four rounds, would give extra parts. I believe how it used to be is when you won a game, it didn't really matter how long it took you or whatever happened, but you would get whatever parts you amassed during that. And people were upset, especially survivors players, because they would dominate all 4 rounds and they would actually get less parts than if they had just purposefully lost 3 of the rounds and then won the rest of the remaining 4. So this was kind of a way to keep that out of the equation and potentially, I guess, reduce farming that may have occurred in survivors. Certainly didn't stop farming and interrogations, but and so that was the main thrust of this patch, was interrogations. And this is a really good mode. I struggle to kind of think of modes in other multiplayer games that are kind of like this. It's like a there's like two phases of this mode. You have your interrogation phase, and then you have your lockbox opening phase. And I like how this mode really kind of makes use of some of the back parts of the map. I mean, you can argue like, if you're defending a lockbox, you're kind of camping out in the back of the map. But a lot of those areas, like, say the firehouse and, well, maybe not the firehouse and checkpoint, but like the science building in university way down at the bottom of the hill. Like people are very rarely in there, but with interrogation, it kind of forced some of the gameplay action into there. And so it was kind of almost a refreshing, it was almost like the maps became refreshed because there were other areas of the map that you were fighting in. And this mode actually kind of also, I think in many ways, just completely decimated Survivors. Survivors was already, I think, a lesser popular mode. But then you introduce interrogations, which was, I still think supply rate is more popular, but it's still fairly popular mode. And again, further reducing the player pool counts, it's just, I think, just started to slowly kill Survivors. But yeah, so that's patch 1.03. But let's get into our main topic. And today's topic, I want to talk to you about hacks. I want to talk to you about glitches and exploits in factions. And this topic is pretty high on a lot of people's mind, I think, right now, at least those that are still playing factions, because there are several exploits that are live in the game right now. And unfortunately, I think they're never going to get fixed. So right now we have crab walking. This is basically swapping weapons to the point of swapping weapons and crouching / running, and basically allowing you to kind of have, I believe, almost or unlimited sprint. You're just kind of a vector, kind of moving like a weird crab-like creature throughout the map, which is just a really weird exploit, but that's going around these days. There's wall shooting, which is like shoulder swapping so fast that your bullets penetrate walls. And then, of course, you have your out-of-bounds glitches on maps like Billstown and Hometown that are just make the game not fun for anyone. And it's unfortunate because Naughty Dog has kind of dropped all support for factions. Since the last couple of years, I don't think they have done any patches related to factions. I think one of the most recent things they've done to factions are remove it from PS3. So at this point, they barely are acknowledging its existence. And honestly, it's really disappointing, I think, for me, especially because there actually was a Last of Us patch that recently came out in 2020. This included, I believe it was mostly a PS5 compatibility patch that also reduced some of the load times on the single player. Now, I'm not a programmer, but I'm pretty sure these exploits that are running rampant in factions are not that hard to fix. And so I'm really disappointed that, just as a show of good faith and goodwill to the community, and especially you're bringing this game over to PS5 where people can play factions on PS5. I just I just don't understand why Naughty Dog hasn't addressed it, especially because factions heads are just salivating at even the slightest hint of anything for Factions 2 news. There we feel like the ugly stepchild over here, you know. We heard the game announcement in 2016 for The Last of Us Part 2, and we were so excited for Factions 2. But then that never came. And now they basically don't mention it. And now the only thing we have is Factions 1, and they're not fixing it. And so it's disappointing. I mean, I think all you would really have to do as a programmer is put a cooldown on the shoulder swapping and put a cooldown on the weapon swapping, which exists currently in Uncharted 4's multiplayer. There is a cooldown for both those, so they at least know how to do that. And then for Billstown, Hometown, those exploits, you just put up an invisible wall, which Naughty Dog has done for other areas of the map that had glitches before. So it's really disappointing, and I think I think another topic in the future is really going to be like Naughty Dog's poor communication strategies, and kind of I think they really kind of shoot themselves in the foot sometimes with their strategy. But that is what it is. But I also kind of want to briefly kind of touch on some of the exploits, glitches, and hacks and things throughout the years that have come from, you know, day one release all the way through to the latest kind of patch that maybe took some of these out. And I do have a bit of a confession to make, and it's not something I'm proud of, but I have partaken in some exploits in the past. At the time, I kind of thought of it as like trolling and having some fun. And I think, to be fair, at that time, the assumption was, oh, Naughty Dog's going to patch this in like a week, so we could just do this for a little bit of fun. But I think I've grown up and matured and realized that really these aren't fun, even for the limited time. They hurt people's experience, and I mean, to be honest, I don't know about others, but I play Factions to kind of relieve stress, to, you know, get some of that aggravation out. It's fun for me, and, you know, and sometimes you don't have a whole lot of time for it, and, you know, if you only have like a half hour to play and you spend that half hour playing against glitchers and hackers, it's not fun. So I know, at least for me, I regret ever even partaking in some of that stuff. But let's talk about some of them. So this is something I never partook in, but hacking. There were hackers on PS3. I don't think you can really hack on PS4, at least not to a extreme extent. But on PS3, there was a hack that some people had where you had infinite everything. Infinite Molotovs, infinite bombs, infinite smokes, ammo, armor, parts, all that stuff. And every once in a while, it was quite rare, I think, at first. Every once in a while, you would run into one of these people, and usually it was so funny because they suck so bad. Like most glitchers and hackers and exploiters, they're so bad at the game that they're trying to resort to these things to, I don't even know why. I don't know what the purpose is, but they basically just like spam mollies all over the place to the point where they were just showering it everywhere and didn't even have any aim, and it was just so hilariously sad watching those people. There was also another hack, I believe it was an aimbot hack, where you could basically have a hunting rifle and it would just auto headshot everyone. I definitely remember playing against one of those one time, and it was just like everyone was just instant down, like within an instant. So luckily, I don't think much of that has happened in PS4 days. I don't, not that I haven't heard of any of that. There were some other kind of out of bounds glitches. There was Suburbs Generator was one of the first ones I remember. This is, you used to be able to climb up on top of one of the generators in the back of Suburbs, and that would reveal like the whole map. There was a wharf railing glitch. You can still do part of it, but not anything that would actually give you any advantage. But you would go on this, basically go on this stair and then like use a bow to walk along this edge and then land on a railing, and you could walk the whole railing around the edge of the wharf to like a spot where you could shoot through the map. And by the way, these ones that I'm mentioning are all like, they've all been patched out. Coal mine, there was another one where on the bottom side of coal mine, there's a big rock and you could take a bow and while aiming the bow, you could walk up the rock. And I think you could also use strategist a little bit. I don't remember too well, but I'm pretty sure you could have all your friends like die and use strategist to spawn on you, and then you just like go out in the expanse of the snow. And there were a lot of like strategist type exploits as well. There was Bus Depot, one where if you were up against a certain wall, you could spawn and you'd be on the other side of the wall. There's a checkpoint one where if you jumped out of a window at a certain time, you could spawn strategist on someone and it would put you on like a 3rd story floor where you could shoot everyone. And then there was also University one where you could do kind of the same thing. You spawn on someone in a certain location. They have nowhere to spawn you, so they spawn you up above on like a 2nd floor balcony where where no one can reach you, and you can just fire on everyone. So those are some of those glitches. There's also a couple nail board glitches. One of them was basically if you didn't pick up if you didn't pick up a board or a plank from the box and then you move to another box and another board spawned, you could craft a nail board, go back to where the original plank was, craft another nail board, and swap them back and forth. You could also do this with a machete. And every time you swapped them, the items for a shiv would appear in your inventory. And so you could basically have infinite shivs using this method, which is crazy. And there was another nail board glitch where if you were midair, if someone nail boarded you while you were like dropping from a ledge, like in midair, basically it would launch you in the opposite direction like crazy far. And people used to use that to kind of get outside the map, get like all over the place on the map. I think you could potentially do that to a down person and then spawn on that down person, revive them, and then you'd be like wherever. But that required a lot of coordination and someone on the other team to help you. So that wasn't like super rampant. And then another thing that's still kind of going around these days is the idea of like a turbo or a rapid fire controller. And I think these are real, but I don't think they're as common as a lot of people say. You get accused of, or I'd get accused of using this pretty often, especially when using the variable rifle, because people don't really always believe you can shoot as fast as you can. I think the deal with these turbo things is that they just maximize the speed of the bullet firing, and it makes it like full auto, so you don't have to you don't have to pull the trigger for each individual shot, but it would make it full auto and maximize the efficiency. Whereas I think a human without anything could still reach that. It's just rare. It requires a lot of timing, skill, and understanding of a certain weapon, but I don't know how it works. But I do know that the accusations for those fly. I would say they fly like 75% more than actually are people using them. I myself can't even think of a time, at least on PS4, when I saw this. I would see it for hackers on PS3, but it would be like faster than it could ever fire. But yeah, so those are like the glitches and the hacks, the exploits. You know, it's not fun. It's kind of crazy that in the current state of this game with all the glitches and exploits that people are still logging in and playing so much because it's just such a good game. But luckily, I mean, I don't think it's as rampant. I don't run into it a super lot. And most of the time when I do run into like wall shooters, they suck. So then they usually lose anyways. So yeah. But anyways, that is the end of the main topic. And finally, I want to conclude with a little Factions Watch news. And this week, we have sort of semi-ish news, which I think is just kind of more speculation. There's nothing concrete here, but Naughty Dog recently tweeted out a bunch of job postings. A couple, I think one in particular was for like a video editor / trailer creator. A lot of people are latching on to that in particular and thinking, okay, well, maybe they have a trailer to show sometime soon, and maybe it's going to be Factions too. Maybe. So maybe that is what that's all about. We never know, though. I mean, they could be gearing up for, you know, their next game. They might already have trailers for Factions 2 already made a year ago, and they're just still working on other stuff. You never really know. I mean, you can only make some crazy assumptions from these types of things. Yeah. And I mean, they could be hiring for a role that's not going to start until June. You know, so you can't, I think people need to take some of this stuff with a grain of salt, but it is something to kind of keep a little bit of an eye on. So I'll agree with that. But yeah, so that concludes our episode today. I hope everyone enjoyed, and if you do enjoy, please subscribe. But I hope everyone has a good rest of their day. Bye.